Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode of Dynasty Season. If you, while you're watching this, can go and just scroll down and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching it. If you're listening to it on any of the podcast platforms, just go ahead and leave a review. Give us 5 stars so that we can kind of get recommended to other people who listen to these shows. So thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen to our content. We hope you enjoy it. Leave a comment on YouTube if you like what you're hearing, or if you have your own Dynasty sleeper that you want to talk about. What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Dynasty Season. I am your host, Patrick Hart, and Austin is here too. Today, we're going to break down the Deshaun Watson trade. A lot happened, and started with Baker being denied a trade, and then it turned into him getting traded now, probably. So we'll have to see where he ends up, but we'll discuss who it affects and what it does for him. And then we will talk a little bit about some like sleepers that we've got going into this year for Dynasty. If you're doing a startup draft, some of these guys are much lower than you'd expect them to be, looking at some ADP numbers and maybe a good value going forward. So we'll discuss 3 players each. We each picked 3. I think we each did. Did you do a running back, wide receiver, and a tight
we
end?
did one of each.
Okay. So we've got that coming at the end, and let's jump right into Deshaun Watson. So Deshaun Watson gets traded to the Cleveland Browns.
After being told that he's not going to the Browns or Panthers, it's between the Saints and Falcons. So then, of course, it's the Browns.
And
Good
then
old reporting. It's been so great.
and then we saw the contract that he got with the Browns afterwards, and it's like, okay, I understand why he put them back in consideration. Because
More
he
guaranteed than any player in the history of the sport.
Ever before.
Absolutely nuts.
So, yeah, it's an insane amount of money. That is, I saw something about like Aaron Rodgers' deal in comparison just looks so tiny, and you're like, well, yeah, Aaron Rodgers is probably going to retire before the last 2 years of that deal, but it's a lot of money to give Deshaun Watson, who may not play 6 games this year, may not play 4 games this year. Like, they went and signed the brisket, Jacoby Brissett, behind him, which you've had stashed and are hanging on to now, because
I wanted
he
him
might
to
start.
grab some random starting job like the Panthers, but I guess I'll get a couple weeks, try and get the value to whoever owns Deshaun Watson, flip him over to him.
Yeah, and I think the biggest winner, which people were scared of right after he got traded, was Amari Cooper. So, like, Amari Cooper went over there, and everybody's like, well, this wide receiver one has never really been super impactful, but this does help Amari Cooper a lot. For Dynasty, though, if Amari Cooper wants to really go up my board, he would have to sign an extension, which I think is possible. I think that, they just got rid of so many first-round picks. They've got to retain people in order to keep talent on that team around Deshaun Watson. So it's going to be interesting to see what some of those things do. It'll probably be a situation where they're going to have to kick a lot of the salary cap. Deshaun Watson's contract this year, like how much he's getting paid this year, is very, very low. So
yeah, apparently it's insane between him, and they restructured a bit of Amari Cooper to where like him and Amari Cooper combined, I think was like 8 or 11
like
mil on the
nothing
year
against the cap.
But they're actually being paid some absurd amount more than that.
Yeah, so I think if Amari Cooper gets like a real extension from them, then I could see him really going up your dynasty boards. But like right now, it helps a lot for this season, but he doesn't have anything guaranteed after that. So, but they did trade for him. What they got in the trade didn't really matter because it was a contract trade. I mean, they gave the Cowboys picks instead of them getting a compensatory pick, so it is what it is. The other news we should talk about. Let's finish up with Deshaun Watson, but we got to mention Robert Woods as well. That was another guy who got traded, so we'll talk about that. But Deshaun Watson, what do you think he does to this offense? They like to run 2 tight ends. They've got a couple good wide receivers and Peoples-Jones and Amari Cooper. What do you think?
It's basically an immediate boost to everybody who's a pass catcher on that team. Like my buy low on or my I think it was just buy in general on Njoku is definitely now
Yeah,
his price is going up. Everybody wants someone who has Deshaun Watson throwing to him. Like people were saying Amari Cooper's done, fade him, and then immediately ignore that Amari Cooper's back to being one of the top receivers.
yeah.
So I don't know. How much does this do to Nick Chubb? Does it actually reduce Chubb if it's increasing the passing,
I
or
am worried about. So there's give and take to it because it also gives the offense more scoring opportunities to where they can get to the get to the red zone and Nick Chubb can score more. Like they get more scoring opportunities, more red zone trips, more points on the board with a higher powered offense. But I I am worried about Nick Chubb because they were giving so many carries to running backs last year, and we saw Nick Chubb put up like 1,300 yards or something, and not even like he was a better NFL player than a fantasy player. And not to say he was a bad fantasy player, you were happy to have him on your team, but for the numbers he put up, man, you would want like for what he was doing for the Cleveland offense, you wanted more for your offense in fantasy. And I think there's no way he can get the amount of carries he was getting before, still split time with Kareem Hunt, and them to use Deshaun Watson as much as they want to because they are going to increase their passing volume. They have to. You don't pay him that much if you're not going to increase your passing volume. So if Nick Chubb is still there with Kareem Hunt splitting time, and you've got more of a passing guy, downs guy in Kareem Hunt, whereas Nick Chubb is still going to get goal line work, he's still going to get opportunities, but it scares me for his overall value.
yeah, he is completely ignored in the passing game. It's not like he gets a smaller amount. He gets none a half of the weeks of the year.
He
It's
did get a
not pretty as
little
a Nick
more
Chubb owner.
involved this year when Kareem Hunt was out, but they still brought in a second back, whether it was Dearness Johnson or something like
Dietrich
that.
Felton was
Yeah,
the other one.
yeah. So they still brought people in even when Kareem Hunt was out. And Nick Chubb did have his own time where he missed some time this year. He went on the COVID list at one point. Like I believe he had a game or two where he was hurt as well. So he did miss some time. But I'm just scared for Nick Chubb. He's also going into, you know, near the end of that contract. He has zero guaranteed money next year. So I'm afraid. He was one of my sells, and this just makes it even more like you're getting less for him now, I think. So if you can get what you were getting 2 weeks ago, do it. But anybody else on that offense? Do you think it gives Kareem Hunt a boost at all?
So yeah, if Kareem Hunt's coming back, well, actually, I don't know how much Deshaun really was the dump it off to his running back type of
Yeah.
quarterback. So I don't know if it really is going to boost it that much, but I don't think it's going to be as big of a boost to the secondary wide receivers as people think because I don't think they're done adding wide receivers at this point. I think if you're investing in the Peoples Jones or really any of these secondary guys behind Amari Cooper, I heard rumors that they're trying to get what is it, Jarvis Landry back. I heard rumors about them going out for Will Fuller.
Yeah.
They're I don't think they're done. I think they're gonna add one more receiver. Either that, I don't know how much draft capital they have left after all that they blow.
I think Will
But
Fuller would be the one I'm looking at if he goes there. And Will Fuller, there's been lots of rumors linking him to Deshaun, whether that was them talking about him going to Miami because you knew Deshaun was wanted in Miami and like stuff like that. Who knows how credible any of these reports are, but it sounds, and they played together in Houston and he had a great season, but he was, oft injured like he was last year. So it's one of those things where I could see Will Fuller end up there, but he does the same thing, in my opinion, as Donovan Peoples Jones. And Donovan Peoples Jones is more physical, can still give you over the top. Like, if I was the GM, I'm keeping Donovan Peoples Jones over getting somebody like Will Fuller. But I'm not the GM. Who knows what they're going to do? Who knows what Deshaun came in there and said, hey, you just paid me all this money. I'm going to be your quarterback. Will you bring me one of my buddies that I like throwing the ball to back? Because we just saw how much, like, Devontae just went to go play with Derek Carr, and Joe Burrow got Jamar Chase, and, like, that's what people are doing. It's very possible. I have no idea how it ends up. So it is possible they bring somebody else in. I like Donovan Peoples Jones. I think that if he stays as the number two target in that offense, he'll be great. But you're betting on him staying the number two target in that offense, which I like you said, I bet they bring somebody else in. There's just been so much talk about it that I believe they will. Whether Jarvis goes back there, I don't know. I think I find that hard to see, but hey, anything could happen at this point. Maybe they bring OBJ back. You never know.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Maybe now that Baker's on his way out, they'll actually go back to OBJ.
Yeah, but I think a lot of the stuff that's going on there has more to do with more to do with the relationship with the organization and their players than it does with the relationship between OBJ and Baker and the coaching staff. Like, I bet that they hate what that organization has done to its players far more than they actually dislike each other as a player. So, I don't know. I just think that, man, you give yourself bad press by like treating a quarterback that you drafted first overall like that, even if like he took you to the playoffs and you treated him like shit. It's crazy. But yeah, I think that, like you said, Njoku gets a big boost. Amari Cooper obviously gets a big boost for this year and hopefully for more years. But they don't have the draft capital anymore to put weapons there in the first round if they want skilled positions, So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Anybody else there in Cleveland you want to talk about?
They did get a couple defensive guys. Apparently, did they actually re-sign Jadeveon Clowney, or are they just trying to? Because I know they just signed Chase Winovich recently.
Yeah,
That
they
one I think is
actually
actually spicy. I like Chase Winovich a lot.
yeah, I think they actually traded for Chase Winovich. So,
Was that a trade? Oh
yeah.
yeah, there was Mac Wilson for Chase
Yep.
Winovich. I'm seeing here.
Yep. So I think that's a good trade for both sides. Like the Patriots did sign Juwan Bentley to a 2-year deal, but they lost Donta Hightower. Mac Wilson is like, we haven't seen him become anything special, but they had a lot of young linebackers in that linebacker core, like with Taki and all those guys there. But like they had a lot of young linebackers, so getting rid of Mac Wilson is not really a big deal. They brought back Anthony Walker on a 1-year deal, so prior to him,
Anybody opposite of those Miles Garrett double teams? That's gonna be spicy, I think.
yeah, and
So if you can grab Chase Winovich for cheap, I know he hasn't done too amazing, but that might be a guy in IDP to look at.
he's one of those young guys that every year at the start of the season for the Patriots, we're like, hey, maybe this is the year Chase Winovich like does something, because he's like a flashy guy. He's got the long blonde hair, and you're like, do something, guy. Like you see him every play, and you feel like you want to get him every year. But every year he starts off, he has a couple good games, and then it's kind of lackluster. But like you said, if he goes opposite of Miles Garrett, hey, he may have an IDP role. That's something that you can look at. So, what else do we got here? Anybody else on the defensive side you want to talk about there?
So I did take a look at their draft picks. It looks like their first draft pick in this upcoming draft is round 2 pick 44, and then they have 78, 99, and then everything's after 100.
Yeah,
So they could grab a wide receiver in the draft, but it's their only
there
second
are
round. They're
good
running
second
low on
round
draft capital. They
wide
gotta they
receivers.
gotta be good with what they're picking
Yeah,
at this point. They can't just throw them at anything. So
there are very good second and third round wide receivers, especially in this class. This is a deep wide receiver class. So, I mean, like, you look at the teams that we think are going to take wide receiver in the first round, and you look at all of the wide receivers, and you're like, that guy's going in the first round, that guy's going in the first round, that guy's going in the first round. And then you're like, wait, there's not that many teams that are going to take a wide receiver in the first round. Like, these guys are going to be pushed into the second and third round. And there's a lot of good wide receivers. So they could still get a third guy for that offense that leaves Donovan Peoples-Jones intact. But they also went out, like, they drafted for pure speed with Schwartz last year. Like, they've done some weird things with those picks. So who knows what they're gonna do? I think they're gonna have to go get a veteran, but
yeah, I
especially a
think
wide
it's definitely
receiver.
gonna be one of these last couple guys that are left that they sign if they go for wide receiver.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Robert Woods before we get into our sleeper candidates here, are way too early sleeper picks. But
Oh,
the
Bobby Trees.
yeah, the Bobby Trees news was interesting. I looked at his contract a week or two ago, and it was like, well, he's still technically under an injury clause because he tore his ACL, and so most of this is guaranteed, and then it becomes fully guaranteed on I think tonight when we're recording, it became guaranteed this morning. So his contract for this year is fully guaranteed. Goes over to the Titans where they just cut Julio Jones. They really needed a second receiving weapon. Their next guy was like Nick Westbrook Akine, and like that's okay. Well, you need another receiver at that point.
He might be as serviceable as a 3, but you don't want him as
Yeah,
your 2, honestly.
exactly. And so bringing in Robert Woods, who over the last year we saw that Rams offense, once they got Matt Stafford, kind of drift away from those short and intermediate routes that Cup and Woods were living on with Jared Goff. And we saw them bring in OBJ and bring in more of a downfield element to their offense, and him and Cooper Kupp just on the same page. So you can kind of see this happening. And then they bring in Allen Robinson, who is, a different style of receiver from them as well. So it really just shows how that offense is evolving with Matthew Stafford, because they loved Robert Woods. There was reports about them when they made this trade. They wanted to make sure it was good for Robert Woods because they loved Robert Woods. So I think this is a great landing spot for him. Ryan Tannehill, we've talked about him kind of being lower in our dynasty rankings, but he's still a serviceable quarterback. You're going to get fine numbers out of him and AJ Brown. Like AJ Brown could still get 100 plus catches, and Robert Woods could still be very involved. But they did sign in Austin Hooper as well at tight end, which I forgot to mention. That is a one that I think could be fantasy relevant. They had Ferkser and Swaim there, so that's another
Yeah,
guy
they
on
have
that.
nobody competing with Hooper, so I think
Yeah,
Hooper immediately becomes that number 1.
yeah, and I think he is good. So I'll talk a little bit about him here in a second. So um, there's not a lot of other receiving threats on that Titans team, and Robert Woods should be pretty comfy.
Yeah,
And
he should get a pretty solid amount of targets. Like, there isn't a bunch of lesser guys that are going to
yeah,
start taking up. It's going to be all
him and AJ
just
Brown.
him or AJ Brown. That's
Yeah,
it. And then some to the Austin Hooper, but I do not see too much being spread out outside of those 3.
yep,
But the question is, how many passes are we going to get out of Tannehill? How much yards can he really throw out there? And how much are they going to want to pass when they throw the team through Derrick Henry? But Derrick Henry's getting older. Who knows when he's going to
yeah.
fall off, and they have to go back to throwing more than they have been this past couple years.
And we've seen Ryan Tannehill put up very serviceable seasons for fantasy wide receivers. So it's not like I'm afraid to have a receiver with Tannehill throwing to him. I'm just not betting on Tannehill as my fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, and especially not as a QB1. If he's a
Exactly.
QB2, it might be a fine, but
Yeah. And
he's no
especially
way near
he's one of
QB1.
those guys that you can go out and buy for relatively cheap, who's going to be a veteran and give you QB2 numbers if you need it. But, that's easier said than done. Buying a quarterback is never easy in Superflex. So,
Yeah.
but let's talk about our sleepers. I will start off with the guy I just mentioned of Austin Hooper. He's only 27. It was a 1-year, $6 million deal, but like we said, not a lot of competition at the tight end position. And when he went to Cleveland from Atlanta, this was a big deal. Like, he was hyped up. We expected him to be good. And he did have time where he was good. He also had some time where he missed games. And they also had injured Baker. And then they drafted a Harrison Bryant, who is looking like he's going to fill that second tight end role. They're franchise tagging David Njoku. Like, that was a crowded tight end room. So he kind of got lost. But Austin Hooper was very, very talented. He's been a 2-time Pro Bowler. He was great in Atlanta. He had some time there in Cleveland where he was good. But like we just said, he has an opportunity here in Tennessee to get himself back on the fantasy radar. If he has a good year, he could very easily get a 2-3 year deal with a team that puts him in a spot to help your dynasty team. He's only 27. He's not super old. And when we talk about tight ends, like for a tight end, he broke out very early. So if you think about like we're looking at tight ends much older than him having very productive seasons. So I'm not worried about his age. I like the biggest scary thing in Dynasty about him is he's on a 1 year, $6 million deal. That's the scariest part. But I think he's a good enough player, and he's going into a role where he can very clearly be the top tight end in that offense, and he can win a job for the next year or two. That's how I view it. So you're getting 1 year of upside with the possibility of him earning a deal. You're betting on the talent of Austin Hooper to get another deal after this because we saw him just kind of disappear in Cleveland. But he is a very good player. So, what do you think about Austin Hooper? We talked about
Yeah,
it a
so
little bit.
that 1 year is a little questionable, little concerning, but at the same time, the price that you're getting him at,
Yeah,
there's just the why not pick him up for the chance that he pulls it off this year and becomes more relevant and possibly a top guy. But
yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
he's not going to be
80.
pricey at all.
Let's talk about like his ADP right now. If we're looking at Dynasty League football, their last like year of ADPs. He was even at the start of last year. He was 169 in ADP. He's even further now, like 257. This is somebody you're getting so late it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm
But
showing here a tight end 38.
yeah,
That's out
now
of 32 teams. Is
yes.
38. Yeah, that is
So
dirt cheap that you're getting him.
he could be on waiver wires now. Maybe not because he just got cut. People are probably were waiting to see where he went before they released him. But if someone was real fed up with the situation and them having three tight ends and Baker being injured and not throwing the ball last year, somebody could have been out and dropped him. He could be on your waiver wire with how low he's ranked. So when we talk about these guys like Austin Hooper is so low. If you were in a startup draft, you could take him whenever you wanted to take him. That's how low he's going.
Yeah, if it's a pure offense draft, like you probably can take him in your last pick.
Yes, because like these numbers we're talking about with the Dynasty League football's ADP, like any of those we mentioned, that's offense only. If you're talking IDP, there's a lot more players that are getting shoved in here as well. So yeah, that's where for the price, the upside, I'm in. Like obviously it's gonna
He
go up a
really
little bit,
reminds me
but
of like Hayden Hurst. Him and Hayden Hurst both
yes,
got 1 year deals to a team where they don't have much competition outside of just a bunch of randos who have been with the team but
and
aren't actually very good or haven't proven anything yet. So they have a very clear shot to be relevant this year.
yeah,
And as long as they can pull that off and secure a bag and a good contract, then they can have some stability after this year.
and they're in very similar positions too. Like Hayden Hurst was the tight end in Atlanta once Hooper left, and then they brought in Kyle Pitts. Right? Like, what's he gonna do? Crowded tight end room. Obviously, that offense hasn't been the best the last couple years. So, it kind of sucks looking at Hayden Hurst's value just drop off a cliff like that, but that's what happened with that offense. Um, so it's going to be interesting to see where he goes following the news of him signing. I don't think he goes up very much, but even then, you can take him whenever you want. So that was my tight end. Austin, you want to give your tight end, and then we'll move on to a different position?
Yeah, so my tight end, I say him, you might think, wait, that guy's not very low. This isn't really that much of a deep dive.
I
But
said this. I
then
said
you
this.
look at the numbers and you realize Zach Ertz is not in the top 12 on anybody's lists, in anybody's mock drafts. He's not going in the top 12. This is a guy who very likely will be a top 10 tight end, if not higher.
For the
This is a
next
guy who
year
has a
or
chance to
two
be
or
top six
three.
this year. Yeah, he can easily be top 5, 6, no problem. And you're getting him. I think the list that we were looking at, he's tied in 15. I pulled up a random mock draft. He was tied in 13. But he's going after guys who aren't going to come close to him. I think he is without a doubt a steal. You can early, instead of getting the top like a TJ Hawkinson or Darren Waller
Yep.
or George Kittle, you can just wait, grab better skill players in the other positions, and then much later grab Zach Ertz, and you have a guy the same caliber at a whole lot less cost.
Yeah, and on top of that, dynasty managers for the last 2 years, like prior to him getting traded to Arizona, everybody was like, what do I do with Zach Ertz? I can't cut him. He's getting older. He's getting paid. But at the same time, they have Dallas Goedert. Like, there's been so much bad, like, feelings around keeping Zach Ertz on your dynasty team for so long that the price is even lower. People are like, oh, people are happy that they can sell Zach Ertz because of how well he did with the Cardinals. But he just signed an extension to do well there again. Like, I want him on my team. I think it's a great pick. Anything else you want to say on it?
Yeah, no, it's how long is that extension? Do you remember? I don't remember the
It's
numbers.
a
How many
3-year
years was
deal,
it?
but I think only 2 are guaranteed
Okay, so
with
if
incentives.
they need cap space, he could get cut after 2, but
Yeah.
2 years, possibly 3 on your dynasty team, that's enough for a tight end at his production level that I'm not worried about
Yes,
it.
and it's going to be good production. And even after that, like, we could see him go be Jason Witten somewhere, and like, you're not getting the top 6 upside that you're getting right now, because right now he truly does have top 6 upside. But 2 years from now, maybe you're talking about, oh, he's still tight end 1, but he is 10 to 12. Maybe a year after that, he's that guy that you're keeping on your team because he fills a need when you don't have a better guy to play, but he's like a 14 to 18 ranked tight end that is still going to be on a dynasty roster, is still going to be valuable. So, like, even if after these 2 years he's like, they cut him for cap space and he goes and signs a deal to split time with the tight end position, like, he's still going to be good for your team. So
Yeah, even after this year or after these first 2 years, if he does have that decline, he's just going to be at the value that you initially got him
yeah,
for. So you
exactly.
profited for a couple years, and then suddenly he's equal value to what you paid.
Yeah.
So either way, it's a win-win.
Yep. But we'll move on to the next one. Let's do. You want to do running backs or wide receivers next?
Oh, let's do running backs.
All right, running backs. I'm gonna bring up one that I talked a little bit about when we mentioned his contract before, but I think really has like true sleeper top, you know, we'll say 18 running back potential. Um, just pulled that number out of thin air. Don't worry about it. But it's Deonta Foreman, and when he came out of college, great prospect, tore his Achilles. You know, we've talked about it a couple times. Just and took a long time to get back to where he was. But we saw him come in for the Titans after Derrick Henry went out, and the Titans after that said, "Yeah, we don't care about you, Jeremy McNichols. Cut him." And they kept the 2 new guys in Hilliard and Foreman. And, you know, Darrington Evans was oft injured and is now gone. Like, they trusted this guy who came in. They kicked out Adrian Peterson. That's how much he impressed. And not only, you know, he had a couple games where he wasn't insanely fantasy impressive, but was very impressive on the football field. And he went and got paid. Now, it's not a huge contract. It's $2 million. But if you compare that to what Amir Abdullah and Chuba were making there, which after CMC went out, we were like, oh, Chuba's the new handcuff. Well, they put Chuba out there, and then they didn't like it. So then they brought in Amir Abdullah, and then they played him. So, like, I'm not out on Chuba. I think he still has potential to be valuable. And I'm going to say something that I don't think is going to happen. But CMC has an out. Like, there's an out on CMC's contract after this year. There's been talks of CMC getting traded. There has been a lot of grumblings about CMC. And this Panthers team is nowhere near where it wants to be. And they have a top-tier player that they can get so much for right now.
Yeah, I think losing out on the Deshaun Watson deal, too, made him see, okay, I don't think there is any win-now opportunity left.
Yeah.
And if they accept that, why would you not ship out Christian McCaffrey as soon as possible before he starts losing value every year? Why wait a year or two with no good quarterback option?
And I don't think that they are totally out because, like, yes, the Saints are a good team, but they still need a quarterback. I'm assuming at this point it's going to be Jameis Winston. But then you've got Tampa, who brings back Tom Brady, right? So they can punt this year if they want to. They can be like, we're not winning this division. Tom Brady just came back, brought all his homies. All right, we're out. See ya. We'll see you next year, right? They could seriously do that. The reason I don't know if they will is because that head coach is going to end up on the hot seat very soon. Like, he's got to do something. Matt Rule has to do something. I am not in the boat that this is Matt Rule's last year. I don't think he has, like, there's some people and analysts saying that he has to draft a quarterback this year. He has to take Malik Willis at 6 or whatever because he's on the hot seat and he wants to keep his job, right? I don't think that's this year. I think that organization clearly wanted Deshaun Watson and they tried for over a year. They clearly want to build a team. But I think that they can look at it and say, all right, let's just, this year, let's get ready for next year. They just signed DJ Moore to a long-term deal. I think Robbie Anderson is going to end up playing this year and then get a cap casualty cut because he got that little extension. I think that they are going to end up moving on from CMC. I think those things have to happen. They have a good young defense. They just need to get the offense there and they need a quarterback to do it. So I think that's a team that hasn't been mentioned with Baker Mayfield or with Jimmy Garoppolo enough because they were so in on Deshaun Watson. But those are serious options now. Like, yes, they have Sam Darnold and it's the same draft class as Baker. Do they really want to do this again? I doubt it. But I could see them go for somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo. There's other stuff with Baker where the guy, I think it's the offensive coordinator there, when the draft was happening, he said Baker was like his 6th quarterback overall. So, I don't necessarily think Baker is going to end up in Carolina, but I could see them going for Jimmy. I could see them trying to get, somebody still. They clearly aren't happy with the position, but I'm afraid of what they're going to do. And who knows? Deonta Foreman could end up their running back for the next 3 years. Not that that's a high probability, but it's in the realm of possibilities. And I think that he was paid enough money, more than Amir Abdullah made last year and Chuba on his rookie deal combined. Those are the other running backs behind CMC. So, I'm in. So I just want to see what happens. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know how much I'm willing to go in on a handcuff, even if there's so much injury news around McCaffrey. But going in as a stash for value instead of thinking it as the handcuff, I could
Yeah.
see that a lot better because he has been injured a lot,
Yeah.
so he
Like the
could pick up
floor
value. I could
is
see
handcuff.
honestly I could see them like grabbing Malik Willis or trading for, or not trading for, maybe grabbing one of these other starters. Like, what if they go for a Nick Foles and start the year or something? But like
Who
they start
knows?
off the year with Christian McCaffrey and go like lose first of 4 of their first 5, and then they're like, okay, we're coming close to the trade deadline. Ship
All
out
right. Yeah, we're
McCaffrey,
done. Let's
and then
do this.
suddenly you have the starter for the rest of the year,
Yeah.
and you got him for absolutely nothing.
Yep.
So yeah, I can definitely see where the value could be there. But as long as McCaffrey's back and not leaving,
Oh, yeah.
he could do nothing.
Yep.
But McCaffrey, I haven't seen him play football, and I don't even know how long at this point. So
Yeah. And
him and
I
Michael Thomas, I'll believe they're football players when I see them again because I haven't seen
yeah.
those guys in years.
And again, we're talking about like where you can get these guys value wise. Like Deonta Foreman wasn't even being drafted last year. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking late picks. So it's whenever you decide to take him. It may be a little higher now after what he did at the end of last year than you would want to pay. And that's all right. Wait for the rookies to come in here and push him down a little bit because that will happen. And then go get him. So I just think he's a good sleeper who has the potential to gain a lot of value. And even if you don't like him, even if you don't want to bet on it long term, as soon as, if he is the handcuff, as soon as he gets a chance to start, trade him, get rid of him.
If people are desperate for starters, everybody needs a starter to fix their holes at any point during the year. So
Yep.
as long as someone currently has a starting job, you can sell them.
Yep. I'm all for it. So who, and you've done it multiple times. You grabbed Tyrod and James White.
Yeah, I
and,
grab people all the time with zero intentions of ever starting them solely because I'm like, wait, this guy's
Yep.
better than who's on most people's rosters. I can stash this guy, wait until something happens to prove they're better, and then go flip him for a pick. Like you said last year, I grabbed James White, Tyrod Taylor, flipped it for the 212, drafted Elijah Moore. Bam, picked up Elijah Moore off of some free agent dudes that I picked up for like I think 80 fab total.
Yeah. So I mean, it works. So who is your running back?
So my running back is a guy that's sitting at running back 26 on the list we were looking at, and I don't think he is a running back 3. I think this guy is a running back 2. I'm talking Michael Carter, The only person they've brought in to have competition with him is Tevin Coleman. I think Ty Johnson's gone. I think they still have LaMichael P. Ryan, but that guy is a nobody.
Yeah.
And I don't think they care about investing in a big name or trying to bring in a big name running back. I think they're pretty happy with who they have. And it looks like they want to rely on Michael Carter in the passing game a lot. You saw when White was running the offense, the dude had like 18 targets or something.
Yeah.
It was insane, and you could tell Zach Wilson near the end of the year was starting to use him more. He was in press conferences saying, "Yeah, I understand. I need to stop trying to make the hero plays and start taking what I have in front of me, start taking more dump offs." And you can tell the focus is to use him as a pass catching back. That's what he was as his draft
Yeah.
profile. That's what he's ending up doing. And then in the running game, he's running better than people were going to say he would too. He's running
Oh
like
yeah.
he actually has some legs under him. So I think that dude has a pretty solid chance of being an RB2. And if 26, that's outside of that's RB3 range. I think he's guaranteed RB2. Has potential upside. I don't think he'll hit RB1 this year. I don't know if he'll be top 12, but I think he has a really good chance of being the top half of the RB2s. At least like top 18. I think 20 is his floor, honestly. I think he'll do no worse than 20 on the year. But I
Yeah.
think he has a good chance to be like 16 plus, possibly.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think he's a second year player who split time and also got hurt, but showed us he had it. And I I think that Tevin Coleman being the only other like name there right now shows that they want to use Michael Carter. And like you said, we saw Zach Wilson progress the second half of the year. After he came back, was he was understanding that, like you said, he didn't have to make the hero play. He could check it down. He saw Mike White throw the ball to him 20 times in a game. Was like, you can do that, and so I think it does show us what they're gonna do, and I don't think that offense is gonna change much. I think we're gonna see a lot of what we saw last year, but executed better. So I think that Michael Carter has the chance to even, like you said, I think 20 is his floor. His upside, I think he has the possibility to get to wide receiver one upside because, or running back one upside.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think he has the possibility to get there. Thinking about catching passes, I just think wide receiver. I think he's going to catch enough balls to get him there. Maybe not like he'll be one of those fringe guys. I think
Yeah, my
where
biggest worry is the Jets' offense not being enough to push any skill player into that high of a position. But if they step it up, there is the chance.
hey,
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about a Jets player next. So it is what it is. I think we're all expecting Zach Wilson to take a step forward. Now, let's be real, he could not. He could.
Yeah, the Jets are known to jet.
We are talking about rookie quarterbacks that they have gone through so many different quarterbacks since they had Mark Sanchez. Like who quarterbacks are not easy to get, and Zach Wilson, like going into last year's draft, I thought he had the highest bust potential of any of the rookie quarterbacks. I thought he had a huge ceiling, but somebody's got to get him there. Somebody's got to take him there. And I think he's learning and he's getting there. And I think we all expect him to take a step forward. If we see him take that step forward, like week 1 of the season, if I see something I like from Zach Wilson, I'm going to go try and get Corey Davis, which is the guy I'm going to talk about next. But I think Michael Carter is, if that offense takes a step forward and they get more red zone opportunities, more touchdown opportunities for Michael Carter, you take that pass catching and add the touchdown opportunities there, I think it can push him to that back half, like what we want Antonio Gibson to be. Like he could very easily become what we want Antonio Gibson to be with all the pass catching.
Yeah, yeah, easily. I honestly, the one player that I think of that's more relevant, he's starting to fade away, but I think that's the closest comparison to what Michael Carter could be at his peak, is I think like an Aaron Jones type
Yeah.
out in
Yeah.
Green Bay. I think that's really what his possible peak of peaks is.
Yeah, and he doesn't have to run between the tackles all the time. Like Aaron Jones showed us that too. But I think Michael Carter, with Tevin Coleman as his competition, does have a path to 3-down work. Even if he's not getting 20 carries, I expect him to get 20 touches. So, and when you're playing PPR, that touch is more valuable. So, I like Michael Carter, especially if he's outside of the top 24 running
Yeah, where
backs.
you're drafting him as your RB3, RB4, and he has the pretty solid chance of being RB2 in scoring. So
Yep.
if you're getting RB2 scoring out of RB4, RB3 drafting position, that's always value I'll take.
And he's only on the second year of his rookie deal. So you've got,
Yeah, the dude's 22 years old, so if he
yeah,
pans out, he's got
you've
years
got
ahead of him
you've
of
got
being
time.
relevant before he
Yeah.
drops off.
Yeah, and some of these guys that are young and we see that little bit of talent, but don't know what is going to come, whether it's a poor offense or a struggling team or injuries, like all of those things give us doubt. But I think every one of those things we're looking forward with Michael Carter and happy for the future. You can't predict injuries, so just throw it out the window. If it happens, it sucks. There are some guys where it's like, all right, this dude has been injured every year, so I'm going to kind of avoid this just because I've been hurt and I won't be hurt again. So, but you can't predict injuries. It's something that you have to live with when it happens. But he's 22 years old, like you said. Even if he gets hurt and misses a whole year, you're like, okay, he's coming back. Tevin Coleman's not here anymore, right? Like,
Yeah, that's the J.K. Dobbins mindset. He lost the whole year, but it's like, I ain't getting rid of him. I'm putting him right in that IR. Wait until next year. He's
yep,
young. He's going to be good.
yep. I agree. Anything else you want to say on Michael Carter before I talk about another Jets player and Corey Davis?
No, other than like, don't worry about how small he is. 5'8". Wasn't Maurice Jones-Drew like 5'6" or something? The
Yeah.
short guys are great at running back, low center of gravity. I hate when people knock short running backs.
Oh, and there was I can't remember who it was. I was watching an interview. It might have been Maurice Jones-Drew talking at the combine actually about some of these small guys. It's like they can get under arm tackles. They can get around these guys. Their pad level is so low. So what you worry about is, can they take the beating? That's what you're worried
Yeah,
about.
how
But
durable are they really?
but I think they use him in a way where he can be fine. But let's talk about Corey Davis. He is kind of falling. We saw Corey Davis be this prospect that everybody was excited about, and then he kind of stunk and had some good years and kind of stunk as that number 2 guy on the Titans. Didn't really ever
I was like,
fit
he could
into the
never
number
really
1 role.
sustain
Well,
being a number
yeah,
one. Yeah.
exactly. But I think Elijah Moore is going to be the number 1. I think Corey Davis is going to be great. Now,
Yeah.
the problem with Corey Davis is we don't have a whole lot of contract stability going forward. This is really the last year of his guaranteed money, and I think that the team could move on if they do draft like a Drake London or something that we've seen. I think it is a possibility. But I think Corey Davis, like we said, for the price and for future value, I think he can earn another deal. I think in the offense, if it does take that step forward, he's earning another deal. But right now, you're paying like February ADP had him at 173. In 1 month, he went from 120 to 173.
I'm
So
showing wide receiver 68. 68? What is that? Like the wide receiver 6? 7?
so if you're getting Corey Davis at that price, who cares? Right? Like he could be very productive this year, and even if he doesn't get another deal and go somewhere, like this year, his production could be somebody that after week 3, you're like, all right, set it and forget it. Like I've seen what I need to see. This offense, he's involved. He was hurt last year. It is what it is. But when he was out there, I liked what I was seeing from Corey Davis. The offense wasn't there yet, but if they do take that step forward, what I was seeing from Corey Davis on the field, even with Elijah Moore, I like Corey Davis. And the thing you're scared about is his contract and what's left on it. But if he only has 1 year for the price you're getting him, who cares? That's how I feel about James Washington, right? Signed with the Cowboys on a 1 year little tiny deal. Like James Washington, he could be the number 2 wide receiver on that team while Michael Gallup goes on PUP list.
And if he gets rolling, I don't see why when Michael Gallup comes back, they're like, well, this guy was producing. Let's just ignore him. He'll
Who
stay relevant. I
cares?
mean, it
They
might
had
go a little
3
bit
relevant
down,
wide
but
receivers
he'll
the
stay
last 3
relevant.
years.
Yeah, you saw Cedric Wilson scoring at the end of the year.
Cedric Wilson was the wide receiver 4 and put up like 700 yards this last year. So like I'm not worried even if James Washington becomes a three. He was the guy that I was going to talk about as well in this video. He's my honorable mention. Him and Will Fuller were on my list, but uh, anything as the Jets fan, you know, one of the few. I mean, what? One of the few people who choose to let their season end on the kickoff of the season. What is what is your thoughts on Corey Davis?
Yeah, so it looked like at the beginning of the year when I was watching the games, it very much looked like Zach Wilson could not trust anybody but Corey Davis. He was forcing it to Corey Davis. The defense started intentionally putting more coverage on Corey Davis. Is like, I can't trust anybody else, went straight back to Corey Davis. So it started going off a little bit too hard on Corey Davis, and that was causing started off as like very first. I think week one was actually really good. I remember I had him in one of my dynasty leagues, or not one of my dynasty, one of my regular leagues. But I started him week one. He balled out, and then week two he kind of dwindled off. But that was just because he started getting the focus. But as soon as Elijah Moore at the end of the year started taking off, all I was thinking was how much I wanted to see Corey Davis still there and see how much he could really
Yeah.
produce. Because I think once Elijah Moore becomes the number one, Corey Davis thrives in that role as number two. He doesn't work as the number one. He can't handle the top coverage on him. He can't handle the double coverage. But as soon as he's opened up, he really can make the most of his opportunities. So at the wide receiver 6 point, like, even if he's like a wide receiver 3 in scoring, even if he's wide receiver 4 in scoring, getting him at 68, that's the wide receiver 6. That's insanely
Yeah.
low. There are easily people that are above him that shouldn't even be remotely close to above him. That's just too much disrespect for him. I understand that his numbers are up and down and not that great, but for that cheap, you can't just look past it. That's way too good a value on how much he can produce for how little you're paying.
And that's why he's on my list. Because like if you go back to the beginning of last year, he was in that 100 overall range, whether it was just over, just under. Like it was in that range. And then you know he even had a period where he did go up after you know we were excited about him being signed. He got this contract, and you know he jumped up into like the 68, 70 range overall, not just wide receivers. Now he's that for wide receivers. Like that's insane. So if you can get him for free, like it's a piece. Like if you're redrafting or if you're doing a startup draft, like you can get him super late. Doesn't matter. Grab him whenever you want. Like you said, for the price,
Yeah,
who
having
cares?
him as your depth piece for bye weeks and everything else, like that's the price you're paying. Is he's the
Yeah,
guy who might come in on the bye weeks or if you get too many injuries,
and
and he is arguably some teams are gonna not have people good enough in their
yeah,
all their starting spots compared to him. Like you see some teams that they think they do well, they just go downhill, and then suddenly they're starting people like Jalen Rager or just some absolute trash cans, and you're
because
like,
they're young and they
you
might pan
could have
out.
had Corey Davis, but you
Yeah,
wanted the young guys that might pan into something. Well,
yeah.
this is more guaranteed. You got to have some of these more guaranteed floor guys. Even if you're like want the super young, you want everybody to become the boom big next guy. It's just too much. There's too much that happens. He was getting every single game he was playing. He was getting at least 7 targets. I mean, how
Yeah.
do you not draft a guy with that much solid opportunity?
And it's also, you know, for Dynasty, if you're making a trade, it's somebody that you can throw into a deal. You don't have to go try and get Corey Davis, but if you're making a trade with the guy who owns Corey Davis, just try and throw it in. Just see
Just
what
add it on.
happens. Like you may get Corey Davis for practically free, like in a trade, just because you threw it into your offer. So that's how disrespected Corey Davis is being right now. So I think it's a good option, but your wide receiver not as disrespected, but a little bit of a what is going to happen next, like sort of situation.
Yeah, he's
Um,
definitely getting disrespected here. But he's proven his entire career because he's bounced around everywhere. This is the Ryan Fitzpatrick of wide receivers. But
yes,
he's proven no matter who's throwing to him, he can stay relevant. The dude just finished a year
yep.
with Davis Mills. I'm talking Brandon Cooks. He's going to have Davis Mills again. You saw his numbers. He was fine with Davis Mills, but he's going as a wide receiver 44. Wide receiver 4 territory when this guy is easily good enough to be in your starting lineup each week. Like,
With
he might
high
not, or
upside
he
too.
probably isn't going to be your number one guy, but he's a guy you can rely on week in and week out.
Yeah,
I don't
he could be your
understand why
wide
you would
receiver 3 and
draft
put up wide
anybody above
receiver
him in
1
the
numbers
four
any
range.
week.
Yeah, let me look at his numbers for this last year. This guy,
Yeah, he
it's
was very
I
good.
can't fathom the disrespect. There's so many double digit games. He had what, one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 games that he had double digit targets. Like, who else do they have even over there? Have they signed anybody in free agency? Is Nico Collins still their second best wide receiver?
And Brevin Jordan.
I mean, I guess they got a bunch of draft capital, but I'm definitely trusting Brandon Cooks after 1 year of Davis Mills. For Davis Mills, even if they draft some sort of like high caliber rookie, because they have a lot of draft capital now, even if they draft a high caliber rookie, I guarantee you, just like we saw Zach Wilson force feeding Corey Davis early because it was the only guy he trusted. Anybody new coming in, he's going to go back to the guy he trusted, the guy he just played a year with and put up good numbers with. It's going to be Brandon Cooks as the number one on that team. And 43 other wide receivers going above a guy who is the number one on his team, I don't see how you could justify 43 people better than Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, how long is he there? Do you know what his contract is like? Because I know he signed a big extension back with the Rams before he was traded. It looks like this is the last year of his deal, but he is
Yeah,
going
but
to
like I
be
said,
there
it's
for
the
sure.
Ryan Fitzpatrick. He bounces
Yeah,
around. That's what he does, and he stays relevant wherever he goes.
and he's under 30. Like he's at that mark where people who play Dynasty are very scared of him because of his age. But we could very easily see him go after this, sign a 3-year deal with a good team. Like if Brandon Cooks went to the Bills on a 3-year deal after this, you'd be really sad if you were a Gabriel Davis owner, right? But that's a possibility. Something like that could happen. He could go be the secondary outside receiver for the Chiefs after this. Who knows where he could go? He's clearly put up numbers. It didn't matter who was throwing him the ball. Like, I'm not afraid of his age. He's 29 years old this year. Like, I'm not worried about him. So yeah, I think he's a good pick.
Yeah, I think I'm just scrolling up here on this list that we have, looking at who's above him, and I'm seeing people like Juju and Hunter Renfro, which aren't the number ones on their team. Hunter Renfro just got demolished by Devonte Adams with how much of a
Yes.
red zone threat that guy is, how much of a target hog that guy is. There's no way I'm drafting Hunter Renfro above Brandon Cooks.
Yep.
Like, there's just too many people that are going above him. Like Rashad Bateman, he's looked kind of decent, but that's just not that high volume of passing offense. He's not the number one. I don't see, unless you really want a long term guy. Just there's too many people above him that, like Tyler Lockett. I would not take Tyler Lockett over Brandon Cooks at this point.
I have
Who
Brandon
the heck is
Cooks.
throwing the ball to Tyler Lockett? Baker Mayfield? Is Mayfield really going to be enough to push Tyler Lockett to be that relevant with DK as the number one? Or would you rather have a guy like Brandon Cooks as the number one getting a majority of the
Yeah.
target share? It's just there's too much disrespect on this guy, honestly.
And my in my rankings, I have Brandon Cooks at 36, 2 spots ahead of Tyler Lockett, as you mentioned. I have Corey Davis at 40, just not super far behind him. Which we talked about Corey Davis being way back there, but if you look at where I have him at wide receiver 40, it's not like that's super expensive, but where compared to where he's being taken, like that's very good value. Brandon Cooks, wide receiver 36, like very good value compared to where he's going. So I what is he going as a wide receiver overall? What did you say?
44 on this list.
Yeah. So like I have him 36, right behind Calvin Ridley, who's obviously going to miss all this year. Brandon Ayuk, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Michael Pittman. So some of those younger guys who have put up numbers, who have shown us they can do it a little bit, are right in front of him. But he is like that vet who we know can do it. So I definitely think he's worth getting if you can get him for a good price. I just think that people are scared of Houston and scared of what Brandon Cooks is going to do after this because of his age, and scared of the number that is his age in Dynasty. So you can get him cheap. So I think it's good. Uh, any honorable mentions for you? Anybody you thought about talking about but then decided not to? Want to say real
Um,
quick?
yeah, let me take a look here. There's a couple guys that I thought were going a little too low here. Like I'm showing, where was Darnell Mooney? Darnell Mooney at 36 is pretty low on this list that I'm looking at. I would easily take a young guy like that, looking like he's going to be the number one with Justin Fields and looking
Yeah.
very promising. And he's got that young age that everybody loves. He's 24 years old. So Darnell Mooney definitely looking a little too low on this list. Try to see if there's anybody else that are around this. Like what I'm on like the 125 to 150 range. It's always nice finding those deep dives.
Yeah, I
Like
think,
running back 39, Chase Edmonds. I'll take Chase Edmonds a lot higher than that with what his competition is over there at Miami.
and I mentioned James Washington, but another one, Russell Gage. We've talked about it already. Chris Godwin may not be ready. It's a very similar situation to James Washington. More than likely going to be the three on the team, but Russell Gage has more guaranteed years. He's going to be there longer, but you have all right, Tom Brady may not be there. So I think they're very similar players. They're both looking at being the wide receiver 2 possibly to start the season, with Chris Godwin and Michael Gallup may not be ready for the start of the year. Just guys that are in high-powered passing offenses that even when they're the 3, you're still able to play them in your lineup. So I think Russell Gage is another one just like that.
Yeah, I'm showing he wide receiver 65 on this list. Yeah, no, Russell Gage. If Tom Brady's personally requesting him, you saw how much Antonio Brown thrived with Mike Evans
Yep.
and Godwin there. He can thrive no issue. There's another one I'm seeing on here that was Cordero Patterson at RB 43. The dude re-signed. We saw what he can do. Yeah, he's what 30, almost 31, pretty old, but at running back 43. You're just
Yeah.
picking up that's your depth guys, but he has scoring potential to be an every week starter. He was last year, maybe this year, and then poof gone. But you paid nothing for him. Who cares?
Yeah, and we were worried about Mike Davis like last year. Like, what was he gonna do
Yeah,
after
I
we?
drafted Mike Davis in a best ball league, and that was a bad mistake.
Yeah, but like we saw the opportunity; it was there, but it ended up they brought you know Patterson back there to play it instead, and he was catching passes. He was being used wide as well every once in a while. Like, he was very good. Do I know if he's going to do it again this year? No. Do I think Damian Williams is going to be better than, you know, what they had before? Probably. Do I know who's going to get the ball? I have no fucking idea. So I have no clue who's going to get it there. It could be a lot of people. They could still draft a rookie, and that person could end up taking over the backfield. We have no idea. And apparently Matt Ryan is trying to get a 3-year extension or something. So I
Yeah, he didn't like them shopping around either, so he apparently wants a little bit more security. But he might go get that extension over in Indianapolis. I think we'll see.
You mean when you tell your girlfriend you're gonna go look for a hotter model and then she doesn't want to come back to you, you're surprised? Like,
Hey, babe, that chick was out of my league. Can I come back?
yeah,
What? You
sorry.
don't want me back?
Yeah. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with Matt Ryan. We still got to see where Baker ends up. Got some things that we expect to happen over the next week of free agency. That somebody's gonna go get Baker probably before the draft. I can't imagine they wait till after,
I
because
really think
that
what we
team is
talked
gonna
about
want the
before,
draft capital.
Seattle, Indy. That's probably the two. It's probably
Yeah,
one of those two. I don't see him. I don't see him going to the Panthers. I don't see him
I
going
don't
to the
either.
Saints.
I think Jameis is going to the Saints, and I don't think the Panthers want Baker. So I could see them being in on Jimmy or like a Matt Ryan now. I could see that happening if they wanted to bridge until they
I don't
could
know if
find their
they'll trade
franchise
Matt Ryan in the
quarterback.
division like that, though.
Yeah, I agree. But those are just names that could be in conversation. I doubt they're trading Matt Ryan in the division, but they're looking for somebody. They clearly don't like what they have. So who
Take that
knows?
Malik Willis with their early pick. Let's see it happen.
Yeah, it's
Malik
very
Willis was they
possible.
have 9 or 6 or something.
They're 6. So they're at 6, right between the two Giants picks. So the fact that the Giants have 2 picks in the top 10 is wild. Just like the Jets. So
Yeah, New York's got 4 picks in the top 10.
yeah, it's crazy. So we'll talk about those opportunities at quarterback as we see them. If Baker gets traded this week, we'll talk about what it impacts on the wherever he ends up, and same with Matt Ryan. If he signs an extension, who's he throwing the ball to? So
Yeah.
well,
Olamide Zacchaeus. Everyone go pick him up if he's a free agent. He's their only receiver now.
yeah, him and Frank Darby. So
Yeah,
it'll
exactly.
it'll be interesting. If he signs an extension, I will be very surprised, especially after everything that just went on. But they pushed that roster bonus to Tuesday, so who knows? Maybe he gets his roster bonus and says, "All right, now give me more money." Possible. But we'll talk about it. Thanks for watching this episode, guys. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video. If you're listening on any of the podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, anything through Anchor, go ahead and leave a review so we can get into that algorithm and get recommended to people who listen to similar shows, listen to fantasy football podcasts, so they can hear from us as well. But that'll do it for today. We'll see what we got going on the rest of this week. I want to get maybe a startup mock draft going. See if we can get one of those on the channel so people can watch where we are drafting players and see what our thought process is, and we can talk about it as we go. We'll get one of those going this week and go from there. Otherwise, thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one. We're out of here.